It's fascinating how sometimes, without even trying, a change begins. Like a thread being pulled, unraveling something that was always meant to transform. Because, have you ever had that feeling that something was different, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? Like walking into a familiar room, but realizing that something subtle has shifted. And the more you look for it, the more you realize it's not just one thing, it's everything. Because that is how deep change happens, doesn't it? Not all at once, not with a struggle, but naturally, effortlessly. Like water finding its way downstream. When you think about it, has every breakthrough in your life happened this way? One moment, things seemed a certain way, and the next, it's as if the walls of your reality stretched, as if the boundaries, the ones held you in place, they were never really there at all. Because beliefs, they're just stories, aren't they? Stories we tell ourselves, stories we've been told, stories that once made sense. But what happens when a story no longer fits? You don't force yourself to believe it, do you? No. You just let it go. And in that space, something new begins to grow. Because here's the thing. Once you see through a belief, once you recognize it for what it really is, it can no longer control you. And that makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is possible? What else have you yet to question? What if something you thought was permanent was actually just waiting to change? And isn't it exciting to feel that shift now? To notice how something deep inside is already rewiring itself, already restructuring, already making space for something better. Because you don't even have to try, do you? Change happens naturally when the mind is ready. And your mind is always on the way, like a compass that points, not to where you've been, not to where you're stuck, but to the direction that you're always meant to go. And as that thought settles in, you might already notice what once seemed complicated, suddenly simple. What once felt impossible now feels inevitable. What once held you back was never really holding you at all. And that makes you curious, doesn't it? What's the first thing you'll notice? Now everything has already shifted. And you don't have to answer that. Or maybe you already have, because it's already happening, isn't it? Because it's fascinating how sometimes change just happens before you even realize it. It's like a seed buried deep beneath the soil, growing quietly, invisibly, until suddenly one day it breaks through the surface. And in that moment you realize it's already begun long ago. Because that's the thing about transformation, isn't it? It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sneaks in through the back door of the mind. A thought, a feeling, a shift so subtle yet so powerful. When you really think about it, hasn't that always been the way? Haven't there been moments in your life when something clicked? When the old way of thinking simply faded away, replaced by something clearer, stronger, more true? And isn't that happening right now? Because the mind is always learning, always evolving, always reorganizing itself in ways you don't even have to think about. Like a river carving new pathways through stone, effortlessly, inevitably. When you look back, it almost seems funny, doesn't it? To think that you once believed certain things were unchangeable, that certain limitations were real, that certain doors were locked, when in reality, the key was always in your hand. And isn't it exciting to realize that the moment you step outside of an old belief, it disappears? To what once seemed so solid, so unmovable, it was never anything more than a mist waiting to clear. And maybe you can already sense it now, that lightness, that clarity, that knowing. Because once you see through the illusion, once you recognize a belief as just a thought that was accepted without question, the whole structure collapses. What's left? Freedom, possibility, a new way of seeing, a new way of thinking, a new way of being, And you might be wondering, what's the first thing you'll notice now your mind is already rewriting its own story? You don't have to answer that now. Or maybe you already have, because it's already happening, isn't it?